Welcome back to Late Night. We're here with Eddie Murphy. So when did it occur to you, hey, we have to go back, we have to do a sequel to this movie? Enough time's passed.
Maybe about 6 years ago. We had no idea we were going to make this movie when we finished the original one. It was like the story ended and like they lived happily ever after. And then the movie over the years became like, it's the only one of my movies that became like a cult movie where it has like an audience of people that watch it all the time. And, you know, some people get dressed up on Halloween. There's a place a restaurant that turns itself into a McDowell's restaurant on Halloween. And then they have like sexual chocolate malteds on their menu. So it was like, I was like, hey, this movie is this cult following. You know, if we could figure out a way to connect those dots, there's an audience for this picture. That was about 6 years ago.
Don't get me wrong, you and Arsenio have aged great, but it's really fun to see the barbershop characters because none of them have aged a day.
No, they are older. They do look older. If you watch the original movie, you see they look much older.
Oh, that's good. Well,
in the original movie, they look like they're in their like early 60s, and now they look like they're in their early 90s.
One of the things that must be so time-consuming is sitting and getting into the makeup like that. But the freedom of playing those extra characters, it must be worth the time you sit in the makeup chair.
It's the most rewarding thing when you do those and it works and it's funny. And the best thing, my favorite thing is lots of times people watch those movies and they don't realize it's, you know, us doing those characters because that's in the marketing when the movie first comes out. But once it's around, people don't know. They don't read the credits. They just see it and, you know, don't even realize it. And that's my favorite when they don't know that it's me. And, you know, I tell them, oh, I'm that old Jewish guy. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm the old Jewish guy. And they go, oh, that's my favorite thing.
Hey, I mean this sincerely. This is a free idea I want to, because as you talk about playing multiple characters, I think the Oscars should start doing something where they give out an award every year for a movie that is 25 years old that the Oscars admits now deserved an Oscar. And I feel like next year, The Nutty Professor should get the first of these. Because I just feel like it represents everything that movies are supposed to be. And when I think about those dinner table scenes and being lucky enough, especially now when people aren't seeing movies in theaters with a bunch of people, like I remember being in the theater, like collectively laughing like that. And so that's my free pitch to the Oscars, is that you get the Oscar you deserve for that movie.
Oh, thank you so much, man. That's one of my favorites, too.
It's the amazing thing is just the rhythm and pacing of scenes where you realize, oh, it's just you in 5 different chairs, and the fact that you have to figure that out. I mean, obviously, a great deal of it happens in editing, but when you actually see the finished product, are you also, even though you were there at different times, are you blown away as well?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and like I said, it's rewarding, but it's thankless because they don't even, if it's done really, really well, you can't see all the work that went into it. So like a scene around the table that took, 2 weeks to shoot, and that whole sequence winds up being, 4 minutes long, and the audience isn't thinking about any of that stuff. So it's rewarding, but thankless.
It was worth it. I want to tell you it was worth it. I read that originally Tracy Morgan was going to play your son in this film until you guys realized that I guess you only have about a 7 or 8 year age difference. And it would maybe be a hard sell.
The third draft of the script, we were still writing Tracy as my son. Then we started going, would you believe Tracy was me and Leslie's son? And it was like, no, I don't believe that. So we had to, turn him into the uncle.
I like that in a movie where there's so much that's unbelievable, that's the one journey people aren't willing to make. They'll believe there's a fictional African nation, but they're like, I won't go for that. Wesley Snipes is also really funny in this movie.
Wesley is amazing in this movie. I did a movie last year with him, Dolomite Is My Name, and he was hysterical and just a wonderful actor, and we had a really great screen chemistry. So I went right into this movie with him, and so happy. I originally was going to play General Izzy, and it was like, Wesley Snipes would be so much better. And he is funny and menacing and just a great actor.
There are, I don't want to give away too much, but I mean, it is really fantastic, the number of cameos, the number of iconic people, not just from the 90s, but from the last 50 years. And at this point, is it pretty easy for you to pick up the phone and say to someone like Morgan Freeman, I have a very good part for you in this movie. Would you do me a solid? Is that happen pretty simply, or is it hard?
He was like, we were like, you think Morgan would do it? And we went through the agents and all that stuff. And when he did it, we jumped around and danced. It wasn't easy.
That's good. I'm glad to know there's still people out there that are hard for Eddie Murphy to get.
Yeah, it wasn't easy. We didn't think of it as being easy, and we thought we were the luckiest people ever when he said yes.
Well, I can only imagine what it was like being on set, considering how enjoyable it was to watch it. I've got one thing. I'll cut it out if you don't want to answer it. My friend Neil Brennan. He's friends with you.
Yes.
He told me a story about how Paul Mooney tried to beat you up outside of the Comedy Store.
Nah, not tried to beat me up. First of all, Paul Mooney could never beat me, not even when he was young. In fact, most comics, as far as comics go, I'm pretty scrappy. I don't know if I've met a comic that, could, at any rate. But no, it was an argument because they gave me the light the first time I was at the Comedy Store. Paul Mooney and them, they gave me the light because I was going on. I just kept going and going. I hadn't met Paul Mooney yet, and they gave me the light. And I was like first year SNL, and I was killing. And I was like, they're giving me the light? And I was only there for like 10 minutes. And I said, who's supposed to be coming on? They said, Paul Mooney. I said, who's Paul Mooney? And they said, yeah. I said, you want to see me or Paul Mooney? And I said, So I did like another hour or something. So when I came off the stage, they were like crazy. And Witherspoon was by the bathroom at the Comedy Store. And he said, next time you get off that stage, you better get off that stage. I said, man, you. He said, you have mama too. And we went outside the parking lot. Then Mooney came walking up and he's like, excuse me, homie. Yes, you have a routine about the Amityville Horror, about a ghost in the house. And I was like, yes. He said, well, I have a routine that's very similar. Let me hear your routine, homie. And I was like, I'm not doing my routine in the parking lot. And he said, you. And I was with John Landis. He said, and he said, and you too, white man. If I had a knife, if I had a gun, I'd shoot the both of you. That was the first night I met him. And then when Richard heard about it, he took Mooney and Spoon, and he made them come to the main room at the Comedy Store the next night and after hours and apologized to me.
Wow.
Richard made them apologize. He was like, hey, you guys are just being mean to that kid because he's a new hot and y'all was jealous and that y'all apologized. And Richard made them apologize. Richard was always so nice. And then Mooney became a great friend and Spoon as well. But the very first night I met them, Spoon was like, you and your mama.
Well, needless to say, I am glad I asked. Hey, thanks so much, Eddie. Please come back soon.
Okay, Seth. When it's all safe to come back, I'll come check you out, bro.
We'd really like that. Thank you so much. Coming to America is currently streaming on Amazon Prime Video.